I think. All right, everyone. Welcome to this is what our live stream number 7. Finally happening this year. This is something I wanted to do for a while, and finally happened in 2022. And so this is number 7. So anybody watching live, thank you for being here. And today I am here with the Kung Fu Genius. How you doing, Kung Fu Genius?
Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you. Thank you for being here. I wanted to meet you, and because I've been watching your videos for months, pretty much since I found you. So now we are like talking and we're live. So thank you for giving your time.
Sure, absolutely. What was the first episode you saw? Which was the one that brought you to my channel?
Oh yeah, well, I'm glad you asked because I was gonna tell you anyway. So, so I'm glad that you asked me. Actually, this is how I found you. I found you the same way I found Viking Samurai. I found you, both of you, through the algorithm.
Okay.
So
okay.
This is what happened. Viking Samurai, I found him when he had like 4,000 subscribers around that time. So maybe like 2 years ago. And I remember that day or whatever, I was watching. I just Googled like I think like a Van Damme tribute video, whatever. And then later on my news feed, it was a video of Viking Samurai about Van Damme. And then I clicked his videos, and I didn't subscribe right away. And I told him when I had Viking Samurai here. So I kept watching like several of his videos in the next following days, and then I subscribe, and then I follow him on Instagram, and then he's follow me too, and stuff like that. Now the same thing happened with you because I found your channel like a few days after I watched one of Viking Samurai's interviews. Whenever he interviewed Frank Dukes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think he split it. I don't know which video, because he split that interview like in several videos.
Sure.
So whatever video it was about Frank Dukes, his interview, a few days after, I saw like your thumbnail on my newsfeed, and the one, it was you about talking about Viking Samurai having him in his channel. So it was about Frank Dukes. That was one of your topics.
Got it.
And I remember Viking Samurai. I didn't see your video live because it was my very first video, so I had missed you live. But as I was watching the entire video, Viking Samurai was in the live chat with you.
Yeah.
Because I remember, because you said that's the time. That's the time. I don't want to get a spoiler, but that's the time when you you said you have sent the story several times, but about the maybe next time. It was the very it was the very first time that I heard that story.
Yes.
And then when you were telling the story, I was just cracking up. And then that's when you said about Van Damme being in the sauce.
Yeah.
And then Viking Samurai said in the chat that he's naughty, and then you said like, oh, Viking Samurai said that he's naughty.
Yeah.
So that was my very first video of you.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. It's very funny because, I mean, for people who follow my podcast, they know my Van Damme story. I've told it many times. My unfortunate run-in with him, I wish it had gone differently, but it ends up being kind of a funny story. And, he spends a lot of time in Hong Kong. He has a place there, from what I understand. So the likelihood that I will bump into him again is pretty high, and hopefully the second time will be a better story than the first one. But yeah, like I like Viking Samurai stuff. He's great because I think for people kind of in our age group, we grew up on like the Van Damme movies, but also like the older Bruce Lee stuff and the stuff in the 90s. And like the new generation, they don't really know that stuff as well. So it's kind of cool to see his content and talk about all those old Van Damme movies and things like that, because there's really not a whole lot of people talking about that stuff. So you get more people talking about Bruce Lee and Kung Fu movies, but like it's also fun to talk about Van Damme and Bloodsport and Kickboxer and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, and yeah, absolutely. When I I like his slogan or for the channel Vikings, like making the 80s and 90s great again. I like that part.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I 100% believe Van Damme was on the sauce during Bloodsport. Come on, look at his body. Give me a break. Come on.
I don't know, man. I mean, I go like, well, but I am biased, dude. I love Van Damme. I'm sure you love Van Damme too. Well, I think you love Bruce Lee probably more.
Yeah, but I have a fondness for Van Damme because he was the martial arts guy who was alive when I was a kid. It was like Bruce Lee, for people my age, when you find out about Bruce Lee, it's the best and worst day, because it's like you find out about, wow, look at this guy Bruce Lee, and then you find out also he died.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you find those two things out on the same day. But Van Damme was like around when I was growing up, so he was a guy, you know what I mean? So it's cool. It's interesting to see where his career has gone, because this is something that we can't really talk too much about when it comes to Bruce Lee, because his career was so short and he died when he was so young. So, the questions are always like, well, what would he have done if he stayed alive longer? Where would it have gone? And you can kind of see, like in Van Damme's case, although you cannot really compare their careers, but it's interesting to see, what happens to an aging action star and how do they pivot and how do they change. And I think like both Seagal and Van Damme are two kind of examples of two different paths where someone can go, as they become an aging action star. So it's kind of interesting.
Oh yeah, definitely, it's very interesting. It's Seagal. I don't like him or dislike him. I am pretty neutral about Seagal. I like some of his movies, like the early ones mainly.
Yes, for sure.
But definitely, I never had posters of Seagal in my bedroom when I was a kid.
Yeah, neither did I. But I mean, what was cool is growing up in the 80s, it's like you would read about Aikido and sometimes you would see a demonstration and it looked kind of cool, but it didn't look like anything like that would wow you. But he was the first one to really make it look cool because he made it brutal. Yeah. So you saw an art that was usually very soft and had all those kind of things, but then he was like really kind of hardcore with it. And I really like Hard to Kill. I thought Hard to Kill was a great movie. I like the fights in there. But yeah, as he got older and he hasn't had kind of the best showing in recent years. And I also talked about it on the podcast. I actually talked to him on the phone as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had a conversation with Steven Seagal. So for my kind of those who followed me on the podcast, I apologize. They heard this story a few times, but I was on the toilet when one of my friends called, who's a movie producer, and he was like, "Hey, Alex, I have Seagal Sensei here with me, and he has a question about Wing Chun." And I said, "You are the best person to ask. So I'm going to put him on." So, like I'm sitting on the toilet. I pick up the phone because it's my friend. And then suddenly he's like, "I have Steven Seagal here. He needs to talk to you." And it's like, wait, what? Like it was so many things happening at once, right? It was before he made that movie Attrition. Where he kind of tries to be like a Kung Fu Wing Chun guy or whatever. And so he had a question about learning from some Wing Chun Sifu, and he wanted to know who this guy was. But it was funny to talk to him on the phone because he talks exactly the same way on the phone as he does in his movie. And it was funny to hear him call me like, Sifu Richter. Just nice. To hear that like out of his mouth. It was like very funny. And, I just was like, Nice to meet you, Segal Sensei, while not mentioning the fact that I'm sitting on the toilet right now. Sorry, that was
That's
my
funny.
not so glorious Steven Seagal story. Yeah.
Oh, and I forgot. Well, I kind of introduced you just now, so everybody watching live or after the fact. But Kung Fu Genius. I mean, I know who you are. I know what you do. I know because, like I said, I've been watching your videos for months. Because I found you maybe what 4 5 months ago. I mean, usually when I usually leave a comment
Yeah.
on your video, so that's how I kind of keep track. But yes,
Sure.
it's been several months. But why don't you present yourself? Like just say who you are, what you do, and how active you are in social media, which
Okay.
is awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah. So my name is Alex Richter, also known as the Kung Fu Genius.
That's
The Kung Fu
right.
Genius nickname is a bit ironic. I mean, I actually don't consider myself a Kung Fu Genius. The term Kung Fu Genius in Chinese, Kung Fu Tian Choi, is like a thing, and like they can like it's almost like a god of Chinese martial arts, right? Which of course I don't consider myself at all. It's a bit ironic. It was a nickname I got through the Hong Kong press a few years ago, which is like a story in itself. But I use the name Kung Fu Genius with a bit of irony and a bit of sarcasm, because in my circle of friends of Chinese martial artists, I'm like the lowest level guy of the people I know in terms of knowledge and skill. So it's kind of a bit of a joke. But I teach Wing Chun Kung Fu in New York City. I've been doing that for over 20 years now. My school's called City Wing Chun. It's right in the middle of Midtown Manhattan. So pretty much for the last 20 years, I've mostly just been a Kung Fu instructor in New York City. And of course, I'm a big Bruce Lee fan. I've been doing martial arts since I was 8 years old. I did Taekwondo. I did other styles of Kung Fu. I trained with some people who had done Bruce Lee's version of Wing Chun in Seattle. So I've been around the block for a while. I'm not like super old, but I've been doing this for a very long time. And around 2015, I think, I started a podcast with a good friend of mine called Big Sean Madigan, who's a Jeet Kune Do guy. So the idea is like he's the Jeet Kune Do guy, I'm the Wing Chun guy, and we would have a podcast, and it was called Dudes of Kung Fu, and people really liked it. And it was an audio only podcast, so we didn't do a video of it. And Big Sean was like one of my closest friends, and I love doing the podcast with him. And then in 2020, in December, he passed away suddenly. And I kind of lost my podcast partner, and it was a huge blow to me. And I had already had the idea of doing the Kung Fu Genius podcast even before Big Sean passed, because Dudes of Kung Fu was just about Wing Chun and Jeet Kune Do, just martial arts stuff. Because even though Sean was a Jeet Kune Do practitioner, he wasn't like a Bruce Lee fanboy. So we could talk Jeet Kune Do, but like when I would talk to him about Bruce Lee movies, he'd be like, is that the one where he wears the yellow tracksuit? Like, is that the one where he's got the scratch? It's like, dude, you're a Jeet Kune Do guy. How do you not? Bruce Lee only made like 4 movies. How do you not know? And he's like, I'm a Jeet Kune Do guy. I'm not a Bruce Lee guy, right? So I thought maybe I would do like the Kung Fu Genius podcast, so I could talk about like movie stuff and Bruce Lee stuff and nerdy stuff, which wasn't really what Sean liked to talk too much about. So then I would do that, and then he passed away, and then I decided that I would then, push my podcast, because now I didn't feel like continuing the Dudes of Kung Fu with another co-host, because that podcast was our creation, and to put someone else in there after he passed away, it wouldn't have been the same thing. So I thought it's better for me to do something else. And I wanted to have a partner in my podcast that was the opposite of Sean. Sean was very knowledgeable about Jeet Kune Do, and we could go back and forth discussing martial arts. And so I decided to put my student Dre as my co-host. And Dre is funny because he's kind of like the voice of the audience that doesn't know all of these details. Yeah. So I feel to a certain degree, he likes a certain segment of the audience. They can relate to Dre because he's not like the guy who knows all these like dates and facts and stuff.
He's a funny dude.
Yeah, but Dre's just great. I mean, I love him to death. He's been my student for a very long time. He's an instructor at my school, and he's just a funny dude. We would just sit around, watch TV. Like watching TV with Dre is so funny because he'll like comment like on what's going on, and it's hysterical. And like for me, I want a YouTube channel which is just Dre responding to stuff that he sees on TV because it's hysterical. So I thought he'd be kind of like the perfect foil for me. It took us like in our first season, the first few episodes, we were kind of like trying to figure out exactly how to do it. But now we're almost, this week, I think we're going to have our 100th episode of Kung Fu Genius. And so I think now we finally got a bit of a flow going on. So it's fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, one of the questions that I was going to ask you is about Dre. Like, well, you just said that he was your student, but how did you guys meet? Like, did he just show up? Hey, I want to learn. Or
so Dre just started learning Wing Chun at my school, and usually I don't teach the beginners. I haven't taught the beginners for many years. So usually when new students join, they're learning from like one of my assistants, and then after they've been there for a while and they start to advance, then they come to my class, and that's kind of when I get to know them, like after they've been at the school for a little while. And Dre was one of those guys. I think he started maybe around 2011, 2012, something like that. And he had previously practiced Jeet Kune Do before he came to my school. And then I just started to hang out with Dre more and more. And he's like my brother from another mother. He's so great. And he's been to Hong Kong with me. I mean, he was there during the famous Vietnam story, right? Among other crazy stories that happened in Hong Kong. If you ever have a chance to follow Dre on Instagram.
Oh, yeah, I do.
I believe if you look at his profile, because you can save your stories, like your highlight stories, right? And while we were in Hong Kong back at, I think it was 2018, he made all these stories on Instagram, just shooting stuff around Hong Kong. And they're hysterical because he would find like some weird old man in Hong Kong who's like acting shit, and he would like film this guy secretly, right? And then he would put funny music and he would put in these stories. And he had these crazy stories, and I think he saved them all into like some of those highlight reels. So if you ever have a chance to go back and look at like the highlight reels from Hong, they're hysterical. Like he's so wild, man. So I love him to death.
I'm gonna do that because I started following. I found him on Instagram. I don't know, maybe a few months ago, whatever. That's how I saw or how I knew that he went to California for In and Out because he posted something about In and Out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I never been to In and Out, so I don't know if
they're not bad. They're not bad.
They're not, okay, yeah, because everybody says they're like the greatest thing, but I don't know.
I like Shake Shack. I'm a Shake Shack burger kind of guy. So, but you know, I like a lot of burger. I like Five Guys too. So I don't know. For me, it's not like a huge thing, but yeah, I'm kind of a burger nerd too. So.
Yeah, definitely Five Guys is my favorite joint.
Yeah, Five Guys.
Since we don't have In and Out here. And the few times that I went to California, we didn't go to any In and Out. We were kind of passing by, so I never had it before. So maybe one day.
I mean, they're good, but it's not gonna. If you've had good burger before, I mean, what is the difference between all of them? It's very small.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I think because right now you are in Florida, right?
Yes, correct.
Because this Florida thing about the Subways at what's the name of the grocery store?
Publix.
Public Subway, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. To me, those are overrated. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, you're talking about the bread from Publix.
Yeah, like the Publix Subways, like the sandwiches.
I don't think I've ever had it. I mean, when I come down here, I really come down here because my mom cooks. My mom is Cuban, so I get like Cuban food every day here. So that's usually like I come down here every December to kind of see them, and it's a big struggle to not gain weight, stay in shape during this time. I usually go back to New York a little melted.
Yeah, it's because my wife, she's born and raised in Florida. So when I go, like when we go and visit, I know like she grew up, I guess, eating those sandwiches from Publix.
I'll have to go try it out. I've never had it.
Yeah, and to me they're overrated because to me it's just a sandwich. And those we lived there for 2 years, and people that I met, people from Florida, they like pretty much like glorify these things. I don't know.
You can't really trust people from Florida though.
And I mean, hopefully no Floridian gets offended, but I think just a Subway to me, I mean, nothing.
Right, right.
A little overrated in my opinion. All right, let's see. We have somebody in the comments. Topher, yo, yo, yo. Topher, thank you for watching, man. Let's see.
Topher's the man. Topher is a Wing Chun Sifu here in Florida, and
nice.
hope I get to see him at some point. He teaches Wing Chun in the Hokkam Ming lineage, and he's come up to New York a couple times to do training with me, and I've hung out with him. He's a great dude. He's a kung fu movie nerd. He's a martial arts nerd. He's a man,
nice.
you know, after my own heart. He's fantastic, and I wish he was closer to me, man. Because even in Florida, he lives in, he lives in the butt crack of Florida, as far as I know. I don't know anyone else other than Topher who lives in that area.
Oh, like way south or where?
Oh, he lives Bradenton, something. I don't know, something like that.
Bradenton. We live in the Tampa Bay, Wesley Chapel.
Yeah, it's somewhere over there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But for me, it's like Florida is either Orlando or Miami. Well, everywhere else, it's just the South. Come on. Sarasota, he said. That's it.
Yeah, Topher, thank you for watching, man. He says, not much, just looking forward to this conversation. Awesome, Topher. Yeah, thank you for joining us. All right, me too. All right, yeah, the Kung Fu Genius, and then Topher said Natty Light maybe. Oh, this is back to the Van Damme. Yep.
Yeah, light my ass. I don't think so. In the 80s, they didn't have Natty. They didn't have PED light, or they didn't have Natty light. You either were on the sauce or you weren't on the sauce. I don't know. Look, it's funny because this is a huge thing in on YouTube. You know, is someone natty or not? You know,
yeah.
Physiques and stuff, and you have like Coach Greg, and you have all these more plates, more date sites where they talk about this stuff. And it's interesting because when you talk to experts, you know, they'll look at someone, and you got to look at look at them throughout a long history and look at their body type and see if there was like a huge change at some point, right? And Van Damme was always like relatively fit, but they've been times where he was just like he had so much lean muscle mass on him, you have to wonder. But then again, there are people that train really, really hard and have, you know, these really great physiques. I mean, there are a lot of people who think that Bruce Lee was on all sorts of PEDs. And I definitely understand why they would think that. But when you do a little bit of research and you look at Bruce Lee's body type throughout his entire career, then I actually think there's a strong case that he probably was not taking PEDs, because he was consistently losing weight in the last couple of years of his life. And he was not actually as big as he was in other times of his life. It's just that Bruce became more striated in those last couple of years of his life. So he didn't have that much water. He didn't have that much body fat. So you could see all the muscles and in the sinews and the tendons and stuff. But if you actually look at Bruce Lee's body, and you know, in Hong Kong they have this great display. It's like they have a bunch of Bruce Lee's personal effects, his clothing, all sorts of stuff, and you can see it in this museum in Hong Kong. And they actually have a mannequin with like Bruce Lee's clothes on it, like with like a pair of pants that used to be his, and like a sweater with said L was monogrammed in there, and it's on a mannequin that is the same size as Bruce Lee, and it's behind a glass case. And Bruce Lee was 5'7". I'm also 5'7". I'm always excited to say I'm the exact height of Bruce Lee, but I outweigh Bruce Lee by 35 pounds, right? And I looked at this glass case, you know, and you know, the mannequin is the same height as me, he's 5'7". But like his shoulders are actually like they're not like, his shoulders were more narrow than mine. And when you actually look, and he had a 27-inch waist. 27. And so what you don't realize is when you see him with his shirt off in a close-up, and then he can, you know, kind of flare out his lats and stuff like that, it looks really impressive because it takes up the whole screen.
The way of the dragon.
Look at him as a person, he was very small. He was a very, very small person. He had very narrow shoulders, and he had wide lats, but he was not like this dude who was like this. And so that was like a really interesting for me to see how not like physically impressive. By the way, when I saw Van Damme, that was also the other thing that kind of blew me away a little bit. I mean, of course, he's much older now. He's not like the same dude he was in Kickboxer, right?
Yeah.
When I came up behind him and said the famous line, "Excuse me, Mr. Van Dam," and I looked at him from behind, he was not much taller than me, if he was even any taller than me, and he was way smaller than I thought. Like I didn't see these big bulbous shoulders, these big arms on him. Like if you see him in normal clothes, he's like a very unlike imposing kind of person. And I think like a lot of these martial art guys were like that. Bruce Lee was really not that big, but he became striated in the last few years of his life. And a lot of the PEDs at the time, I'm not an expert on steroids of the 1970s, but a lot of times those steroids, from what I've seen from these different videos, usually you retain water. So you get kind of puffy. And Bruce was the opposite. He could not keep water weight on. He kept losing water weight. And so he wasn't actually bigger than he was earlier, like in the 1960s. So if Bruce Lee was taking PEDs, he was on some really bad stuff, because it wasn't really doing anything for making him bigger or anything like that.
He got like, he was looking pretty ripped, like pretty dry, right? Like,
yes.
Like,
I actually had the wrong idea about Bruce Lee, and it wasn't until I interviewed John Little in like the first season. Because John Little used to work for the Bruce Lee estate, and he had access to like the daytimers and like what Bruce's training routines, and he wrote a bunch of books, so he knows a lot, maybe more than most, about how Bruce Lee trained and how that training changed over his career. And I was like, yeah, Bruce Lee got so much more jacked when he was in Hong Kong, right? When he made those movies. And John Little corrected me. He said that actually he did not get any bigger. And then he showed me a photo of Bruce Lee from the late 60s with his shirt off. And what you see is that he wasn't like as striated, he wasn't as cut. But when you look at his chest, it's the same size like it was in Way of the Dragon and in Fists of Fury and in Enter the Dragon. It's just that he was not quite as lean. But when you see him do his lat spread in the 60s, he's not smaller than he was in those movies. What you're seeing is he's like very dry muscle. He has no water weight in there, so you can see it more and you can see the separation. But he didn't become super jacked suddenly. He just became more striated and had less body fat. And that's kind of the difference between the physiques. It wasn't like he suddenly put on all this muscle mass. He didn't. He was actually lighter in Hong Kong than he was in the States.
Yeah, because that's a very well-known shot, like that scene from the Way of the Dragon, I believe.
Yeah, where he comes out. Yeah,
it looks impressive. Like,
it's very impressive. But when you can see photos of Bruce Lee when he was a teenager, before he even started doing any kind of heavy weightlifting, and he had that lat spread. I mean, it's part of his genetics. People always think, like it's just a matter of finding the right magical training routine. But the truth is, if you don't have genetics for arms, or you don't have genetics for lats or calves or whatever, you're not really going to be able to develop them to any great degree. And Bruce Lee had those perfect lat genetics, and so he always kind of had that.
Yeah, the V taper looks incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I've seen just recently, maybe this is a photo, maybe you have seen it before, because it's a photo of Bruce Lee. And I don't know if it's maybe it was Photoshop or not. I don't know, but I want to know your opinion.
Yes.
It's a photo of Bruce Lee, and then I think he's like that or something, like standing like this. And somebody, they put a circle on his knuckles.
Oh yeah.
And they look like very almost like exaggerated, like
barnacles growing on the side of a boat. Yeah,
something like that. Is that, do you in your experience
really? No, that's legit. Wing Chun people tend to get that on the bottom three knuckles. You can see a little. I know the light is a little bright. We tend, because we punch with the bottom three knuckles. So when we hit the wall bag, and Bruce also hit the wall bag, it's made out of canvas. So when you're constantly punching this thing, it roughs up the skin on your knuckles, and then that skin can get really thick. So you can see like if someone is a boxer or a karate guy, it's usually these two knuckles that get all big and red. And if someone is a Wing Chun guy, it's usually the bottom three knuckles. And so when you see Bruce Lee, you see his bottom three knuckles are red, and that's from wall bag training. But when you look at like the photos of Bruce Lee over the years, he didn't always have that, because you get that kind of callous skin when you're training regularly. And of course, there were times when maybe Bruce was wearing gloves more to hit the wall bag. And I also think that when he went on those tours to the karate schools, usually when you see his knuckles, they were red. So I think before Bruce went on tour to visit those karate schools, he would actually do more wall bag training so his hands would look like that, so it would be more impressive, right? You can even see in one of Bruce's last film before he came to the States, when he made as a teenager. I think it's called The Orphan, but I could be mistaken, because I don't know all the names of his early films. Yeah. But there's one where he's kind of dancing, then you see Bruce Lee's teenage Bruce Lee, and when you look at his hands, his bottom three knuckles were red because he was learning Wing Chun at that time. So I remember seeing it, and you see him like in color, it's like in the late 50s, and I always looked at his hands, I'm like, he had been hitting the wall bag recently when he shot that scene. So that's a pretty normal thing for Wing Chun people to have.
Oh, I see. Yeah, because they look impressive in the photo. I was like, oh, that looks.
He would go really crazy, and sometimes it would grow. He would have like calluses growing up. But then you would look at his hands in Enter the Dragon, and then it would go away, because if you don't constantly do that, then it goes away. So maybe he was hitting later. He hit more with his gloves, so it wouldn't wreck his hands too much, or maybe he didn't want his hands to look like that later, so he wouldn't hit the wall bag as much. I don't know.
Gotcha. Do you own any of those movies, like his very early movies?
I have a few of them. Yeah.
Where do you get them? I never seen them.
I got them in Hong Kong. I got them, some street market in Mongkok, 10 years ago, selling, bootleg DVDs there, and they have like Bruce's collection and stuff. So I picked up a few of those things. And
all right. Cool.
Yeah, it's getting harder and harder to find that kind of stuff now.
And I'm sure those are in Mandarin, right? They don't have subtitles.
No, they're actually in Cantonese, because I bought them in Hong Kong.
Okay.
And I think when they originally came out, because I think those films that he made were really made they were made for local studios, and they were probably originally dubbed in Cantonese anyway, because I don't think that they distributed those films very far. Shaw Brothers was different, because they had the worldwide distribution, and a huge part of the Chinese-speaking audience outside of China speaks Mandarin, so they had that, and I also felt that Mandarin was a little more sophisticated, right? So those films were shot without sound, and they were dubbed later anyway. And with the exception of the battle cries, like the whoa, that kind of stuff, even Bruce Lee's voice was usually dubbed by someone else in Cantonese, even though he spoke Cantonese in the original one. It's like when you watch Fists of Fury or those, like later they released it, it's another actor speaking for Bruce. So even though you see the mouth is close, it's actually another voice saying the Cantonese. So there's not that many examples in his films, with the exception of Enter the Dragon, where you actually hear Bruce Lee's voice in the Chinese version. There's little bits here and there where he did some dubbing, but not really.
Oh, I didn't know that stuff. Yeah, cool. Yeah. I always get educated in your videos, like, honestly.
No, thank you.
No, yeah. And,
I'm still learning a lot too. I mean, for me, it's mind-blowing that they would shoot films without sound until that practice remained until the early 90s, that they just shot the movies without sound, and then they were dubbed later in both Cantonese and Mandarin for local and international distribution. And I remember one time I asked Bobby Samuels, who I had on my podcast. Bobby Samuels made films in Hong Kong. He's the only African American to be in the Hong Kong Stuntman Association, and he lived with Sammo Hung for a few years. Sammo Hung trained him as a stuntman, and then he did a bunch of movies. And Bobby's a good friend of mine. And then I once asked them, I said, like, what about like the dubbing with all the sounds, because they shot those movies without sound? And he said it was crazy because he went to the dubbing studio to dub his own voice, and he said in the corner there were like these two Chinese dudes. and they were the ones that would make the fighting sounds, you know. So the actors would do the voice, and then there's these two dudes in the corner. And he said those guys had been doing it for so long that he said like one of them had a cigarette hanging out of his mouth, and there's like there, and then they have all these like they have a box of all these different tools to make sounds. And like he's got this like clapper, and they're just like watching these two guys. They're watching the fight. The one guy does one fighter, the other guy does another fighter, and they're just watching it and just making these. They're just watching it and making the sounds while the fight is going on and recording it. So they had been doing it for so long that they can make the sound effects for the fight just live while watching it. They wouldn't even bother to like practice or rehearse. They'd been doing it for so long, and they had all these different things for the whooshing sounds and the knife sounds and the hit sounds, and they would be hitting stuff on the floor and making other sound. Like he said, it was funny because they just like have a cigarette hanging out of their mouth, and like they almost seem like they're not really interested. They're just kind of doing it and half paying attention. Which I thought it was just so Hong Kong. I don't know. It's very, very funny.
It's a second nature for them now.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's see who says here. Did you see that? Hey, fellas, I hope you're doing well. Oh, that's one of my buddies, Mike. He's from the UK.
Cool. Awesome.
Hey, Mike. Thank you for watching, Mike. Yeah.
Did you see that? That's cool.
Yeah, he's a big Back to the Future fan, like a big one.
Oh, that's awesome. I just showed Back to the Future to my daughters last year. We watched all three of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, they really liked it. It's cool.
Oh, yeah. I like them too. I know. Recently, did you show your daughter? Was it Bloodsport or Enter the Dragon? One of those two.
Yeah, I haven't shown them Enter the Dragon yet.
Oh, so Bloodsport then. I remember you said it in the video. I was trying to remember which one it was.
I showed it to my youngest daughter first, who's 7, and because she was homesick from school one day, and I stayed home to take care of her, and then I was like, "Do you want to watch Bloodsport?" And she's like, "Yeah." And then so we sat and we watched it. She's so smart. I mean, of course, every parent thinks their kid's the smartest kid in the world, right? But my daughter was like, I mean, spoiler alert. I don't think anyone who's watching this has not seen Bloodsport, but like, when like halfway, when they first get to the place where the Kumite is going to be held, and she sees like Bolo, Chong Li, and you introduce all the characters, and she's like, I think Chong Li is going to beat up Jackson, and then Frank Dukes is going to get revenge against Chong Li. She figured it out halfway through. I was like,
figured it out.
Wow. And yeah, she loved it. And then I told her the whole story of Frank Dukes and everything. And then, her mom comes home that night, and then she's like, I saw Bloodsport today. And then her sister was like, her older sister, I haven't seen it. And then finally a few weeks ago, then I played it for her older sister, so they have both seen it. So it's fun to kind of introduce these classics to them.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
They seem, it's funny because one thing about the older films is because they didn't have all this CGI, they didn't have all this technology. For the most part, they were more story driven. I mean, of course, there's schlocky, terrible written stuff from back in the day as well, but like Bloodsport, for what it is, kind of a low budget canon movie made for like $1 point something million, right? Is pretty good. I mean, like, it's got a compelling story, and like, and you'd be hard pressed to find kind of low budget movies now that weren't really. Yeah, look at that. That's totally bad. and it's like they kind of hold up. They're interesting. I mean, like you look at a movie like Cyborg. Of course, when you look at some of the technology and stuff, like with the cyborg, and like you could tell it's not very good in terms of special effects, but it's still like you could still watch Cyborg and it's still entertaining. And whereas like there are movies that I saw 2 years ago that I'll never see those movies again. Like you don't have that same connection to it, and like I can go back and I'll watch Bloodsport once a year for the rest of my life at least, and have no problem with that. I love introducing people to Bloodsport for the first time, and I do the live commentary throughout the entire movie.
That's nice, because you've been in those places.
Yeah, and I know a lot about like the Kowloon Walled City, which is where the Kumite in Bloodsport was supposedly held. That's that was a real place. I mean, they didn't have space to have a tournament in there, but like the story behind that is fascinating. And
Uh-huh.
then there's the part where Van Damme is being chased by the two agents, who've been following him, right? And so whenever that scene comes up, I always like to tell people, like, okay, now he's crossing Nathan Road from the Peninsula Hotel. Now he's in Timzacho. And then at the very end, when the guys fall in the water, that's actually all the way on the other side of the harbor. So I always tell him, like, this foot chase could not actually happen because they started the foot chase on one side of the harbor and ended somehow magically on the other side. And so it's like watching Men in Black, the opening scene where Will Smith is chasing the alien. He starts at Grand Central and he finishes in Central Park. And I'm like, that's a lot of running.
And that's the reason why, if I ever go to Hong Kong, I want to go with you, because you're gonna take me to all these places that
Yeah, I'm a huge Hong Kong
that
nerd.
you know.
Yeah.
And by the way, why you don't share a little bit about that Hong Kong trip coming up?
Yeah, so I've been I've been to Hong Kong probably almost 30 times in my life. So that's quite a bit considering how far it is to fly there. And the first time I went to Hong Kong was 1996. So it was still the old airport, the famous Kai Tak Airport, which was like in the middle of the city. And it was still when Hong Kong was under British rule. So had already been there at least once before it got handed over. And then I've continued to go, not every year, but almost every year. Some years I went multiple times, and then sometimes I wouldn't go for a year or two. And I haven't been back to Hong Kong since 2019, since before the whole global thing changed. And this will be my first trip back since 2019. And I decided, because I mentioned on my podcast, that every year I usually go to Hong Kong. I bring a handful of my students. I show them around. I bring them to Wing Chun places, Bruce Lee places, movie places, and they always have a really good time. And now with the podcast audience, people in the audience were asking, like, hey, are you going to do like a formal tour of Hong Kong where podcast listeners can come along? So I decided to do an experiment and do the Ultimate Hong Kong Kung Fu Tour. Yeah. And it's going to be in August of 2023, so next year. I already have, like, you can already register for it. The tour package prices are just for the tour with me. They don't include like flying and hotel, because if people are coming from all over the world, I cannot arrange airfare for everyone doing that. And also different people, some people might want to stay in a fancy hotel. Some people might want to save money and stay in a guest house in Hong Kong. So I just have the package tour, which is just the 7 days with me. And it's like August 21st to the 27th or 28th, something like that. And 7 days, and every day we do different stuff. So one day I do like a walking tour of Kowloon and show them like where Bruce Lee grew up and different spots like that. And then some days it's like Wing Chun stuff. And then we go to Yip Man's grave, and we go to like spots that were in Enter the Dragon and Bloodsport. Nice. And so it's a tour which is like, it's geared a little bit more towards people who practice Wing Chun, because that's what I do. So it's a lot of Bruce Lee and Yip Man and Wing Chun stuff. But there's also movie stuff and Kung Fu stuff, and also the tour of the city. So I opened up this tour, and I was shocked how many people signed up, and probably don't have too many spots left. Maybe I could take about 8 more people. I think that's about it. But if people want more information, they can go to citywt.com, and if you go where it says shop, there's a drop-down menu. It says Hong Kong Tour. You click on that. All the information's there. You sign up. I send all the information so you can make a good decision before you decide to buy. I have like a PDF with all the stuff you need to know about going to Hong Kong and everything. And I'm excited because I usually go with like 4 or 5 of my own students. And now I have like 12 or 13 people signed up from Europe that I've never met before. And so they're going to do this tour with me. So I'm excited to introduce Hong Kong to people for the first time. Hong Kong's a city that has been part of my life for a very long time. My first daughter was born in Hong Kong.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And, the whole Bruce Lee and Wing Chun connection. I mean, Hong Kong is like a very near and dear to my heart. And even a lot of the local people now, they don't really have a big interest in Kung Fu anymore. and it's very difficult to find people who can show you these things. I'll tell you an interesting story. The late Sifu Chanchi Man, he was one of Yip Man's private students, the real Yip Man, not Donnie Yen IP Man. And Sifu Chanchi Man learned in the 1950s, and he even started before Bruce Lee. And Sifu Chanchi Man, unfortunately, he passed away earlier this year, but he was a very good friend of mine. Every time I went to Hong Kong, I would hang out with him, and he would tell me about how he learned from Yip Man in the 50s. And he learned from Yip Man before Yip Man was famous, and before Yip Man even taught Bruce Lee. So he was like learning before it was like a big thing, right? And so he would tell me all these stories and all this great stuff. And his daughter, Judy, is also a very good friend of mine. And I'll never forget, one time I left Chen Sifu's house with his daughter, Judy. And as soon as we get out, I look up and I see the Kowloon Funeral Home, which is a huge funeral parlor in Hong Kong. And I go, you live across the street from the Kowloon Funeral Home. And she's like, yeah, like, why is that a big deal? I go, that's where Bruce Lee's funeral was. And she's like, oh, I didn't know that. And like, you have to imagine, her father knew Bruce Lee. And her father was a student of Yip Man. She grew up about Bruce Lee, Yip Man, all that kind of stuff, Wing Chun, all that kind of stuff. Is right across from like where the most famous export of Hong Kong had his funeral. I mean, when you see the funeral footage, it was literally right there. And she's like my age. She's like in her 40s. She's like, I had no idea. I'm like, yeah, like, of course, like, it's the Kowloon Funeral Home. That's where Bruce Lee had his funeral. Like, you live across the street from it. Like, so for me, everywhere I go, I'm like, this is where this happened. This is where this happened. And my students can even the locals in Hong Kong sometimes go like, wow, how do you even know that stuff? It's all I've preoccupied myself with for a greater part of 25 years. So,
that's why. That's why. I mean, if I ever go, I have to go with you because like you're gonna take me to places where that I'm into. I'm into Bruce Lee, and I don't practice any of those martial arts, but I'm into the movies too. So it's something cool. And it's funny because I already told my wife like a month ago. I told her about you and about that trip to Hong Kong.
Yes.
Now I'm not gonna be able to go in 2023, but hopefully in another opportunity.
Yeah,
and
I'll do it again next year. Yeah.
And also, which is cool, she has a friend who lives in Hong Kong.
Oh, that's awesome.
And she met her in Florida. I think she was one of those like exchange students, and she came to see us when we were in Florida for 2 years. She came to visit. Like she comes every one time every 10 years, or every time she can, she comes down here to the States. So anyway, my wife, she's like, yeah, you could probably stay with her. I mean, she won't care. I'm like, cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, definitely. So
that would be cool.
You got to come on the 2024 trip. And I bring students all sorts of places that, kind of off the beaten path a little bit, and little places that people don't know about, not just the big places. And I had a questionnaire. I said like, okay, well, I have all these itinerary points that I'm going to take people to, but if you have a place you want to see when you're in Hong Kong, let me know, and then I'll see if I can fit it somewhere in the itinerary. And a couple people were like, they want to go to the spot where Van Damme does the split. Yeah. And that's actually on the way to the peak, so I know where that is, and I'm like, yeah, we can go there.
You need to add where his apartment is. I think he still lives over there.
Yeah, he lives on the Kowloon side, which is the opposite side from where that famous shot was done. So he actually know the building he lives in, but I won't say it here. I don't want to rat him out, but he lives in a nice building in Hong Kong. That's all I'm gonna say.
And is this place really high? It appears to be like a really high building, no?
Well, I've only seen some videos of him when he's at home in Hong Kong, and I would assume I think he's up there a little bit. Yeah.
I am assuming this because a few weeks ago, or maybe a week ago, he was in one of those Comic Cons in the UK, in Manchester. I think was the For the Love of Sci-Fi. I think that was the name of the Comic Con.
Okay.
He was there, and Dolph Lundgren were they both were talking about Universal Soldier.
Ah, okay.
And Van Damme uploaded a video on his YouTube channel about that interview that they had on the panel.
Uh-huh.
And then towards the end of the video, Van Damme, you know how he's all into stretching and all these things.
Yes.
He said, like, he even stood up on the stage, and he was explaining, you know, but he was saying that every day or every time he gets in his elevator going to his house or to his apartment or whatever, he said it takes about, it's a little over than a minute, like in the elevator.
Oh, okay.
So during that time, he kind of stretches or whatever.
Uh-huh.
So what I'm saying, if it's gonna take you longer than a minute, it has to be somewhere up high.
Yes,
You
yes,
know, that's
absolutely. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's up there. He's in a very nice building. Similar thing, you know, Angela Mao, who's in Enter the Dragon. She plays Su Lin, Bruce Lee's sister, in that flashback scene where
uh-huh.
she's fighting all of Han's men, and then she, like, you know, has to kill herself.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's Angela Mao, and Angela has a restaurant in New York City. Like, she's been running a Chinese restaurant there since the 90s, and so we go and we get food from the great Angela Mao, who's Bruce Lee's sister from Enter the Dragon, but obviously she did many films on her own, you know, Hapkido and The Tournament and Broken Oath and all these films. And I remember someone asked her, like, "Oh, Angela, do you still train martial arts?" And she's like, "Oh, no, not really. But when I'm at home washing the dishes, I will sometimes put my foot up on the wall while I wash the dishes." And I just thought, like, what a totally badass visual. Like, no, I don't really do martial arts, but I'll put my foot up here on the wall while I'm washing dishes. Like, it's like something out of a kung fu movie. It's really, really cool. Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, I remember her. Well, that's the only movie that I've seen. I mean, you know, that she was in it. I mean, like you said, she did other movies, but I'm not familiar with
You
those.
should definitely check out Angela Mao. She was
Angela Mao.
in the 1970s. She was known as like the female Bruce Lee,
Oh,
and
okay.
she did really fantastic movies. Kicks are really incredible. And she was kind of after Cheng Pei Pei, who was like the first big female martial arts star in Hong Kong. Cheng Pei Pei did like Come Drink with Me, a bunch of Shaw films, and then for Golden Harvest, he found Angela Mao, and Bruce Lee came on the set of Hapkido with Chuck Norris and Bob Wall, and he saw Angela Mao, and he was very impressed with her, and that's why he decided to use her to be his sister in that flashback scene in Enter the Dragon. And so she's
Wow.
famous for that, but she went on and did a bunch of movies on her own as well, and she's really incredible. I mean, and then now you see her, she's, you know, obviously she's much older, she's not into that stuff anymore, but it's really like amazing to get some stories out of her every now and again about that time period, because it's really, really fascinating.
Yeah, and going back to that trip up to New York, you everybody watching, down in the video description below, I'm going to put the Kung Fu Genius info, like his YouTube channel and the City Wing Chun website, and in his website that of his dojo, you're gonna see all the information for that upcoming trip to Hong Kong in 2023. So just it's gonna be down there.
Cool. I appreciate that. I'm so excited about this Hong Kong trip. One, because I haven't been to Hong Kong since 2019, which is a very long time for me. And two, because it's really weird. I've been to Hong Kong so many times, and I love to go there and train and to do research and to spend time there. But I really enjoy introducing Hong Kong to people who've never been there before, especially
Yeah.
people who are like martial arts and movie fans, because I remember what it was like going there for the first time when I was a teenager. This is in the 90s, before the internet, before smartphones. I had like a map of Hong Kong I had to like unroll, and like, and
I
I was
remember
going
those.
around Hong Kong to find the Jackie Chan fan club, and to find all of these kind of places, you know. And part of the reason why I know Hong Kong so well is because as a teenager, I would just walk the entire city with a backpack and a map, and I would just walk into places and find out what this is and read books and go to those spots and everything. And so I always thought, like, wow, if someone wants to go to Hong Kong who's like a kung fu movie fan or a martial arts fan, I know what they want to see. so
Yeah.
I can introduce it to them, and they don't have to worry about having a local that might not know those things or might not really care. Have you ever seen the movie Police Story?
The Jackie Chan one, I've seen one, but I don't know which one it is. The
Mhm.
one, because there's like what, five of them, four of them or something.
Well, there's really three.
Uh huh.
The other ones, like New Police Story and First Strike, are kind of,
What?
I don't know, it's almost like superhero movies are. We don't really know if they're canon to the Police Story
Uh
universe
huh.
or if they're like reboots or whatever. But I mean, for me, there are three Police Story movies. I don't really count First Strike as a Police Story movie, but the first one,
Uh huh.
I mean, they're all good.
What? What?
The
What year are those three? Do you know? Kind
The
of.
first one is mid '80s, and the second one is late '80s, and I think the third one is the early '90s.
Oh,
So,
okay, so maybe I haven't.
Police Story One,
Uh huh.
basically, at the end fight scene is in a mall, and he jumps down and holds on to this pole while he's spinning, and there's all these lights and everything, and he burned himself, and he messed himself up pretty bad. I take people to that mall on the trip, and that and Hong Kong has really nice malls, really nice shopping. That mall is really old; it's out of date. It's from the '80s.
Uh huh.
So usually, what I'll do is I kind of walk around that area, and I'll tell whoever I'm with, I'll be like, I want to go into this mall real quick and take a look at something, right? And then I'll walk in and I'll wait to see if anyone recognizes that it's the mall
For the movie.
story, right? And always there's one person who goes, wait a minute, I've seen this place before.
Somewhere else.
And then we look up, and then I bring them up all the way to the top floor, and they can look down and see where Jackie Chan jumped. And then they go,
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's impressive in the movie, but when you're there in person
Uh,
and you look over that ledge and you go, he jumped down from here, you go, oh, you have a new appreciation for it. So
uh,
those are like the kind of things I like to do, like,
uh-huh.
see if any of them notice, like, hey, does this place look familiar, and that kind of stuff. So
No, that's awesome.
it's really fun. Hong Kong's a really fun place, really fun place.
Yeah, the police story that I've seen, and I think I own the DVD, but I think it's one of the most recent ones.
Uh-huh,
It's about he's drunk all the time, and then there are some bad guys, kind of like a younger guys, and they beat him up,
uh-huh,
and then it's like a 2 hour long movie, and then later on, whenever he's sober and he's like an alcoholic in the movie, but
uh-huh.
because he lost somebody, die or something, and but
Yeah,
yeah,
I
this is
remember.
a more recent one. I would say
Yeah.
this is after that, after 2000, sometime
Yeah, so
around that time.
I have to admit, like, because sometimes people, uh, they look at me as like a Hong Kong movie fan, right? Which I definitely am, but I'm more a Hong Kong movie fan of the golden age of the '70s and '80s and '90s.
Hmm.
And when Jackie Chan started to make movies here in the States, uh, that's kind of when I don't I can't tell you much about Jackie Chan's movies after 2000. So,
Uh-huh.
like, because I just don't want, like, I will watch his old stuff from the '80s and the '90s any day of the week.
Yeah.
But like when Jackie Chan is making movies with Johnny Knoxville, then I'm kind of like,
Yeah.
all right, I don't think I need to watch this. All right,
Yeah.
because obviously he's older now, so he can't do the same stunts. And I mean, his big charm was, that it was really Jackie Chan or sometimes his stunt man, but it was a real person doing it. It wasn't CGI. It wasn't
Yeah.
anything else. And so I don't really watch too many of the new Jackie Chan movies. Hong Kong films, like the Hong Kong film industry in general, has definitely taken a downturn. Most of the films they make kind of are for pandering to the mainland Chinese audience, which is a very different style of film than they used to make.
Hmm.
I do occasionally watch some of the new Donnie Yen stuff, even the non-IP man stuff, because he's kind of the only one I think that's really kind of holding it from that old generation. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. This movie, like the one I'm telling you about, the Jackie Chan one, like there are like no Americans in the movie, so
Uh-huh.
it's. But
It's
I'm gonna.
probably one of his China. It's probably I think I vaguely know that. You know why sometimes I see these things is because when I fly to Hong Kong,
Mm-hmm.
those are the movies that are shown on the plane. So
Oh,
sometimes
okay.
like, while I'm flying to Hong Kong, I'll be like, all right, I'll watch whatever Shinjuku incident or whatever, like whatever Jackie Chan thing that he's done over there that I haven't paid much attention to. And I haven't really been that blown away. I mean, and I'm sure that some of those films are good or whatever, but
Yeah.
it's not my wheelhouse. I will watch Project A, Police Story, the original Drunken Master,
Oh, that's a beautiful.
any of
Yeah.
those films any day of the week. I can rewatch those films like crazy, but like,
First Strike. First Strike. I've seen that one. First Strike.
yeah,
I
for
think I
sure.
think I have it.
Yeah, I really like kind of up to Drunken Master 2, like early 93, 94. It's kind of like, for me, that's like the best stuff. After that, the quality was various, but you know what I mean? But good for him. He's obviously a huge star and he's done very well for himself. But I definitely like the old stuff much better.
Yeah, yeah, I have it. I own that. I own the DVD. I think it's in the basement. Later on, whenever I find, I'm gonna take a picture and I'll email it to you so you can see which one
Cool.
it is. Yeah.
Awesome.
What about what's the movie I was gonna ask you about? First Strike. Oh, who am I? Do you like? Are you a fan of Who Am I, or kind of on
Yeah.
the borderline?
So that is kind of the time period where I started to lose a little bit of interest in Jackie's movies. Obviously, I saw Who Am I when that came out. That
Yeah.
final scene on the roof and everything is really, I mean, that's still
Oh
really
yeah.
great peak Jackie Chan. But I have a feeling that like he was just so good at what he could do because he had done it for so long. That's kind of him, in my opinion, kind of coasting on his skills. He can
Uh-huh.
make like a cool movie with cool action, but he's kind of like coasting on his skills at that point. That kind of mid 90s stuff, and also other movies like Thunderbolt and things like that stuff was fine.
Yeah.
But when you look at stuff like Dragons Forever or Wheel
Oh,
on Wheels, like
yeah.
it's
Those are
really
classic
hard.
ones.
Those, yeah, for me, like when you've seen that stuff, it's it's really hard to get excited about Shanghai Noon or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a great vehicle for him. It's American movies with Owen Wilson. He gets tons of money. Like, I totally get why he does it for his career. But in terms of like cinematic value, nothing beats his stuff from Hong Kong from the 80s. And
Yeah.
he's really the best at that time.
Like the action in those, like the Shanghai Nights, Shanghai Noon, maybe even Rush Hour, which I like Rush Hour. Well, one and two. The third one not so much. But yeah, if you compare the action with that, and you said Meals on Wheels,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, yeah, definitely the action takes is it's not as good
Yeah.
as the original.
Well,
Well, not the original, but the first ones.
in the American films, the problem he always had is he had to do with American stuntmen, right? And a big part of action choreography, it's not just the guy who's doing the punches and kicks and stuff, but the other guy has to be able to sell the action, right?
Mhm.
If I fire a punch at your face on screen and it lands like this and you have no reaction, then my punch doesn't look that great. But if the person sell it and play it off and make it look real, so you have to have stuntmen who
Mhm.
can keep up with Jackie Chan and Sammo Hung and Donnie Yen, and you're really only going to find those guys in Hong Kong or in China. And that was a part of the problem when Jackie Chan was trying to break into the American market in the 1980s. They didn't really know what to do with him. This has always been the problem with American producers. It's like, oh, we got this guy Jackie Chan from Hong Kong. He's great. He's like the next Bruce Lee. Okay, so let's put him in a movie where we'll get the same director from Enter the Dragon, and we'll the Big Brawl or Battle Creek Brawl, and they try to make Jackie Chan like a tough guy because that's like the perception. They try to make him like Bruce Lee, and it didn't work. And then they try to bring him back again for The Protector, which was another American film, and that was like a huge flop because they tried to make him like Dirty Harry, saying like, "Oh, you got the guts." Like saying stuff that Jackie Chan would never say. And they made the same mistake with him in Hong Kong. When Bruce Lee died, it was a huge vacuum for Golden Harvest and a huge vacuum for the Hong Kong film industry. Because Golden Harvest as a movie studio was was struggling until Raymond Chow found Bruce Lee, because Raymond Chow was a former employee of Shaw's. He left Shaw Brothers, started his own studio. He basically backstabbed his old boss, and he was poaching all the Shaw actors when they were getting off of contract and saying like, hey, come over to me, to my place. And of course is really pissed off Run Run Shaw. And Run Run Shaw was like suing the hell out of Raymond Chow and trying to keep Jimmy Wang Yu out of his movies. And Raymond was struggling when he started Golden Harvest. And then he found Bruce Lee. And then suddenly he had that. And then 2 years later, Bruce Lee dies. And then it was like, ugh. And then they're trying to find some would-be successor. And when you look at some of Lo Wei, director Lo Wei, who directed Bruce Lee's first two movies, they were trying to push Jackie Chan at that time as kind of a second coming of Bruce Lee, new Fists of Fury, and trying to make him like a tough guy, and it didn't work. And all those films failed in Hong Kong as well. And it wasn't until, in my opinion, some people say it happened a little earlier, but I really think it wasn't until Jackie made those movies for producer Ng Si-yun, where he made Snake in the Eagle's Shadow and Drunken Master. And Ng Si-yun kind of thought Jackie could do comedy. And they kind of let him do the Kung Fu comedy, and it was a huge hit. And then they're like, see, he can't be like Bruce Lee. He's got to be like this funny Kung Fu guy, and that's his thing. And then that's when Jackie Chan took off. And then they want to bring him to the States, and what do? They try to make him a tough guy. And that already failed in Hong Kong, right? So his two big failures in the US, Battle Creek Brawl, which was also for Warner Brothers, and The Protector, were such huge failures. And Jackie was so like upset, but he did something really smart. When he went back to Hong Kong after those two failures, he went and then made a movie in Hong Kong. Like, he made the movie that he wished he made in the States. So Battle Creek Brawl brought him the idea to do Project A. And The Protector gave him the idea to do Police Story. So like, he kind of then went back, and then he was like, okay, this is how I would have made this type of movie on my own. And they were huge hits. And then it wasn't until they released Rumble in the Bronx in the States that he finally became a big star here. But that's because Rumble in the Bronx, even though it's in the Bronx, it's really shot in Vancouver, Canada, but it's a Hong Kong film. It's a Hong Kong crew, it's Hong Kong stuntmen, it's Hong Kong actors. And it was the first time he said, if I'm going to break in the States, I can't do it with American stuntmen. You need to do a Hong Kong film with Hong Kong crew. And then they just made this movie, Rumble in the Bronx, to seem like it's an American movie, but it was a Hong Kong movie. It became a huge success. And that's when he finally broke in, when he could do the Kung Fu comedy thing. But shortly after that, when he started getting all the big Hollywood roles, Rush Hour, all those things, I mean, for me, those films did well. I mean, actually, my cousin is very close to Brett Ratner, who directed the Rush Hour film. So I have I've kind of like a very tenuous, small connection to him through a cousin of mine. So of course, I think those movies are really great or whatever. But on the whole, Jackie's American films, just if you grew up watching his Hong Kong films, you can't watch The Tuxedo.
That's that.
It's like, no, I want to watch the Operation Condor. I want to watch Armor of God. I don't want to watch an American movie where, he's playing second fiddle. And they made the same mistake with Jet Li. It's like, they can't make Jet Li a star. They got to put him with DMX. Here's what we're going to do,
Throttle to the grave.
Yeah, and it's it never really quite works.
Yeah, I remember that Tuxedo. I watched that in theaters. I remember it came out in 2000, I believe. I know. I think I might own it, but no, it's not a good movie. No, Jennifer Love Hewitt and the bad guy from The Patriot, from the movie with Mel Gibson. I don't even know the actor's name, but he's.
I never watched it. I can't. I saw a preview and I'm like, all right, that's enough.
What's the name of the movie that you just mentioned? Something about the snake. The
Snake in the Eagle's Shadow.
It's that training montage is insane for that movie.
Yeah,
when he's doing that thing with the egg,
grabbing the eggs and stuff like that. Yeah, it's amazing, really amazing.
He does like the spider, or what's that called? Like he's doing this like walking like a spider, like that.
Yeah, he's doing like the back bridge and walking.
Back bridge, yes.
And he learns the cat's claw, and he defeats Wang Zhenglei with the and does the whole He rips them apart. In the opening scene where he's just busting out the snake shapes in front of the background. Like
Uh-huh.
the first time I saw that movie was in the movie theater.
Oh, dude.
I mean, not in 1970, whatever, when it
Yeah.
came out, obviously,
Uh,
but I lived in Seattle for a few years, and they would show a double feature on Thursdays, and like so, the first time I saw that movie was on the big screen, and it was mind blowing.
that's
And
awesome.
you could really see that when Jackie can do comedy mixed with the action, that was really when he was in his element. It's like when they try to make him a tough guy or too serious, it just doesn't really work. Not for Jackie
Yeah.
Chan, you know.
And yeah, and that fight in Meals on Wheels with Sensei Benny. That's to me that's the best still, like the best one-on-one fight, like martial arts fight in cinema.
Yeah, I think it's really great. I mean, most people kind of talk about that film as being that fight scene as being one of the best fight scenes. And I did on the Fat Samurai channel. I think we did one of the episodes we compared Wheels on Meals with Dragons Forever
Uh-huh.
because he did that. Fat Samurai did this thing called Versus, where we would take two movies and then he would have a panel and we
Mhm.
would debate, and then at the end we would vote to see which one was better, right? Because we both Wheels on Meals and Dragons Forever have all three of the brothers in there, Jackie, Samo, and Yun Bu, and
Yeah.
both of those films have a fight with Benny Urquidez. And I don't remember what the final vote was, but I think like the consensus was the Wheels on Meals fight was with Benny was better than the one in Dragons Forever, but Dragons
Yeah.
Forever is on the whole a better movie than Wheels on Meals, and it's or Meals on is it Wheels on Meals, Meals on Wheels? I can
I always get them mixed up. Yeah.
yeah, I remember that it's I think it's Wheels on Meals.
Wheels on Meals.
Yeah, because normally it's Meals
Wheels
on
on
Wheels. That's
Wheels.
what makes sense, right?
I
But
know.
they
I know it's the other way. Yeah.
yeah, and they did that because one movie that had began with the letter M tanked in the box office, and Chinese are very superstitious, so they didn't want another movie that started with the letter M, so they switched it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah, something to that effect.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so it's interesting how those things kind of affect the titles. And one of the funny things about learning to read Chinese is when I see a Hong Kong movie and then I see the American or English title, and then I look at the Chinese title and go oh, that's not the same at all.
Oh.
You just see none of the titles are this. It's not an English translation, right? Once Upon a Time in China with Jet Li, the Chinese title is Wong Fei Hong. All right,
That's the name
it's called in Chinese Wong Fei Hong, the main character's name, but the American or the English title is Once Upon a Time in China, right? And it's interesting to even Bruce Lee's movies, the titles are not the same. So his first film, The Big Boss, the Chinese title is Tong San Dai Heng. Tong San means is a euphemism for China, and Dai Heng means elder brother. So the Chinese title is Big Brother from China because Bruce Lee's character comes to Thailand and kind of saves them. So it's like the Big Brother from China. So it's interesting that the English title focuses on the villain and the Chinese title focuses on the protagonist. So it's not even remotely close. The Chinese title and the English title are not the same. The second film, Fist of Fury, the Chinese title is Jing Mo Mun, which is the name of the school in the movie, and has nothing to do with fists or with fury. All right, it's the name of the school.
It's just marketing.
And the third film, Way of the Dragon, the Chinese title is Man Long Guo Gong, which is the fierce dragon crosses the sea, because in that movie he goes from Hong Kong to Italy. So it's the fierce dragon crosses the sea. It's not Way of the Dragon. And even Enter the Dragon, I think the Chinese title is Long Zhang Fu Dao, which is a tiger and dragon fight. Bruce is the dragon and the Sekin Han is the tiger, and they fight. So the title really has nothing to do with the English title at all. They're not even remotely close.
It's the one where he goes to Thailand. That's the Big Boss, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna introduce my son to that one soon.
Yes,
The
yes.
big boss. Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to watch it dubbed because he can't read subtitles that fast yet.
Yeah, that's understandable. That's
But
understandable.
I don't like that. But anyway, so I'm gonna have to do that. Uh, but is that the one that it used to be called Chinese Connection, or that's a different movie that used to
No,
be
no,
called?
no. That's also, yeah, the original American titles were even different from the original English titles, right? So
Uh-huh.
the um, the story was they when they released those things, those films to the Western world, they wanted to change the titles to make them more appealing. And one
Mhm.
of the big films at that time was The French Connection.
French.
So they decided to change the title of Big Boss to The Chinese Connection to make
Yeah.
it sound like The French Connection. And yeah, so and then of course the second film was Fist of Fury, but they changed it to Fists of Fury.
Oh, plural.
Yes. All right. So then the big boss was the Chinese Connection, and
Uh-huh.
Fist of Fury was Fists of Fury. But then when they sent the films in the canister,
Mm-hmm.
they switched them. So Fist of Fury, which was changed to Fists of Fury, came in a canister that said Chinese Connection. And Big Boss, which was changed to Chinese Connection,
Uh-huh.
came in a canister that said Fists of Fury. So that's why for like people like us who watched the VHS in the 80s, the Big Boss was Fists of Fury,
Yeah.
and Fist of Fury was the Chinese
Chinese
Connection.
Connection.
And that
Yeah.
was a huge mix up because of the canister and also the changed names for the Western audience. And then since those movies were released after Bruce Lee died, Enter the Dragon came out from Warner Brothers and was a huge hit. It was like the #2 movie of 1973 after The Exorcist.
Uh-huh. Wow.
And so then they took Way of the Dragon, which was made before Enter the Dragon, and they called it Return of the Dragon to make it seem almost like it was a sequel to Enter the Dragon, and it's not even the same story. So
No.
I still get a little salty when like old school guys like my age and older call Way of the Dragon Return of the Dragon. I have a good
Uh,
friend, Charles Damiano, who's got a YouTube channel where he does all Bruce Lee stuff. A good friend of mine, but he still calls Way of the Dragon Return of the Dragon. And every time he says that, my eye starts to twitch. And I'm
Twitch.
like, it's Way of the Dragon.
Yeah.
Like, don't call it Return of the Dragon. That was a weird 80s title for VHS. No one calls it that. Yeah, it's like it kind of that can like kind of drive me nuts a little bit. But I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah. I didn't know about the Return of the Dragon because I always knew it as the original name, like the Way of the Dragon. So I learned something today.
Yeah, well, also the original English title for Way of the Dragon
Mhm.
was Enter the Dragon. So
Oh.
when Bruce Lee did his original treatment for what would be called Way of the Dragon, the Chinese title was the same, Man Long Guo Gong, but the English title was Enter the Dragon. And then later he decided to keep that title for his American movie, and then he changed it to Way of the Dragon.
Okay.
So yeah, it's also kind of, you can even see on some of his notes it said Enter the Dragon on his Way of the Dragon notes. Very interesting.
Ah, and most people who don't watch, or I mean, I don't know a lot of Bruce Lee. I know maybe a little bit more than the average guys, but I like the average person. I think they always confuse the movies Enter the Dragon with a Game of Death,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Game of Death he never completed. He just
Yeah,
shot a couple of those fight scenes, and they later completed it
with
for
somebody's face.
yeah, with cardboard cutouts. And there
Yeah.
were 4 actors that played Bruce Lee in Game of Death in the late 70s
Hmm.
finishing of Game of Death. You had Bruce Lee himself through the
Yeah.
original footage. Then you had the Korean actor Kim Tae-chung, who did most of the fight scenes, and he also was Bruce Lee in No Retreat, No Surrender.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
The same actor, right? A Korean actor. And then they had Yun Biu did all the acrobats.
Oh, it was Yoon View. I didn't know
It
that.
was Yun Biu. And then they had a 4th actor because Kim Tae-chung, even though he did all the fight scenes, Kim Tae-chung couldn't speak English. So they have another actor who kind of looked a little more like Bruce Lee, but could speak English. So when you watch that Game of Death, you can put real Bruce Lee, Kim Tai Chung, Yun Bu, or like this other close-up actor, and you just put checks on them, and then you see how many times they're switching back and forth. It'd be like a close-up of like that Chinese actor who could speak English, and then like you would walk out and it would be Kim Tai Chung, and then there would be one scene from a Bruce Lee movie. And when you watch the fight scene between Bruce Lee's character and Bob Wall in the locker room in Game of Death.
Yeah.
All right, you see it's Kim Tai Chung, and then of course they always splice in some scenes from like Way of the Dragon and stuff. But then there's like this one flip that he does off of like the bench, and if you look, you'll see it's Yun Bu. You could see Yun Bu's face. So it's like a close up of Bruce Lee from a movie, Kim Tai Chung, the Korean actor, and then a flip from Yun Bu within like 10 seconds of each other. And it's like the most schizophrenic thing to watch because once you see it, you cannot unsee it.
Oh, I wanna pay close attention next time. You mentioned this in one of your videos. Who is the one who's doing the flips in Enter the Dragon?
Oh, Yunhua.
Oh, that's not somebody else then. It wasn't.
Yeah, so Yunhua was another training brother of Sammo and Jackie and Yun Bu.
Okay.
In fact, many of them have a Yun name because that was actually the name of their sifu. And because they came from the same opera school, they were known as the the Seven Little Fortunes. Of course, there was more than 7 of them, but when they performed opera, there was 7 in the team, and they would sometimes swap them out, but they were known as the 7 Little Fortunes. And many of them adopted the name of their sifu, Yun. That's why you have Yun Bu, Yunhua, you have all these different Yuns in there, right? And Yunhua is he's definitely arguably the best of all of them. Yunhua, in terms of his abilities, is better than Jackie, better than Sammo, better than Yun Bu, but Yunhua looks like a villain. So even though he had better skills than his other Kung Fu brothers, it's very difficult for him to play a good guy because he kind of just looks like a bad guy, even though by all accounts, he's like an absolute sweetheart. Just like Sekin, the actor who played Han from Enter the Dragon,
he looks like a bad guy.
Played a villain in Kung Fu movies.
Or Boro Young, he looks mad all the time.
Yeah, and he played villains in like the old Quan Tak Heng Wong Fei Hong serials or whatever, but the actor Sekin, they called him Gin Sup, which means Uncle Gin. He was a very sweet person. Like he was a very nice and very affable kind of guy, but always played a villain. But Yunhua is like the best in terms of, in my opinion and the opinion of others. And he's just so good. And you see him, he's in a bunch of the Jackie Chan and Sammo Hung movies, but he was Bruce's primary stunt double in Enter the Dragon. He does the kip up at the very beginning fight scene where Bruce is fighting Sammo. Bruce goes back and then does a kip up. That's actually Yunhua. And then at the very end of the fight, he does the handspring. He goes over. It's also Yunhua. And you see Yunhua in the beginning. I think he's the first guy to, when they throw the apple and shoot the dart, he's the first guy to catch one. He's the first guy. You see him, you can tell by his ears. The second guy are the 2 fat guys who go, ha, 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 ha. And then the third guy is Bruce Lee who catches it, right? So you actually see Bruce Lee's stunt double very prominently in the movie, and then he does the backflip kick against Bob Wall. But I always talk about how good Yunhua is, because if you want to see what a good actor and good stuntman Yunhua is, when you watch Enter the Dragon, when he does the flips over the monks and he lands, that's the end of the stunt. But that's not the end of Yunhua's acting. When Yunhua lands, it's the back of his head, so you can't tell it's not Bruce Lee. Yeah. And then he walks away and he takes a couple steps and he walks exactly the way Bruce Lee walks, with his head down and with that little like, because Bruce Lee had one leg that was shorter than the other. So he walks, so he continues and does it really well. Then when you see the backflip kick against Bob Wall, when you see he lands, he does a couple ones like this afterwards, just like Bruce Lee. And he does it so well, people don't even realize that that's not Bruce Lee doing it. Yunhua is a tremendous mimic. Yeah, really fantastic. I've been close to meeting Yunhua a couple times, but I just never quite met him. But he's, people get excited about meeting someone like Jackie Chan or these big stars or whatever. Yeah. But if I saw Yunhua, I would be like a total fangirl. I would be like unable to speak because I'm such a Yunhua fan. I would just be like, like I wouldn't be able to get the words out. I'd be so nervous because he's so excellent. Kung Fu Hustle, all these movies, he's so excellent. Yunhua is really fantastic.
Yeah, and I always assume until I watched that video of yours when you mentioned that it was somebody else doing the flips in Enter the Dragon. I always thought it was Bruce Lee, and I was like, oh, I'm like, and like you said, he walks like him, so I assume I was like, oh, he knows acrobatics, I guess, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, no, Bruce Lee was not really an acrobat. I mean, Bruce Lee could do handstands and one-handed handstands, and he could do arguably more than the average person, but he was not a gymnast. I mean, he wasn't like a trained acrobat. So, you know, you have these other guys who do that stuff better. So, yeah.
Let's see, we got somebody here. Master Stugold. Gerard is Nick. Hope everything is well at Pingrid. Merry Christmas. Hey, Nick, if you're still watching, brother, yeah, everything is cool. You know, enjoying a little bit of a break, kind of a break. And yeah, Merry Christmas to you as well. And happy 2023. Thank you for watching. We got Topher, hashtag Dre Army. I've seen a picture of that. Of the Dre Army.
We always put that hashtag whenever we have a live chat. Dre Army.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tell you, Dre's becoming more popular than me. At some point, they're just going to want to see him on the podcast.
He's gonna have his own shirt soon.
Yeah, he's gonna have his own shirt soon. Oh, SOB.
Yep. Topher pub subs. Yeah, the subs from Publix. Yeah, those are the ones.
Pub subs. I'll have to try one out, see what the big deal is.
You gotta get a chicken. Oh, there you go. You gotta get a chicken tender sub.
Topher is a legitimate Florida man, so he knows all this information. I'm just a fake Florida guy. I'm a part-timer.
And he's in Sarasota then.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I know what it is. Sarasota. Yeah. Let's see here. Topher, I dig all of. Oh, dude, thank you. Yeah. See, Topher, if you're still watching, let me just tell you that the Kung Fu Genius has no idea about Dragon Ball, right? Am I right? Remember one time I sent you a picture of because I know you love the Wu-Tang Clan.
Yes.
And I sent you a picture of Kid Buu, one of the villains from Dragon Ball Z. And he said Buu Clan or something. And it was his head with the same shape of the Wu-Tang. And you were like, I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't grow up watching Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah,
People make so many references to it. I just feel kind of like an idiot, not knowing what that stuff is. But I have many students who are into that, and yeah, it's one of those things like Power Rangers and stuff. These are like a couple things that I just missed it. I was a little too old to get into it. Yeah.
yeah. Cause I remember when I saw that shirt that I had it, and then I found out that you love the Wu-Tang Clan. I'm like, oh, maybe he's gonna get this reference, and you were like, no, I'm sorry, I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't know. I just know Super Saiyan or whatever.
Oh yeah,
so that's all I know. And then that's when it goes like beast mode. That's like literally all I know. That's all of my Dragon Ball Z knowledge right there.
So yeah, Topher, thank you. Yeah, I've been watching Dragon Ball since 1995, 1996, and yeah, I still love it. And I got a little collection out there, the Ginyu Force, and I got some other Super Saiyans, and I got Frieza. That's I got a bunch of them. Thank you for watching, dude. We have Rahil. Did they watch the Turtles yet?
Talk about Ninja Turtles.
I guess so. Yeah. No.
I still think the original Ninja Turtles movie is the best.
Oh, the originals, yes. Yeah, the reboots.
The first one, not so much the second one. The second one was a bit of a cash grab. When you have Vanilla Ice in a movie, it's a cash grab. All right.
Hey, I like Vanilla.
The first one was really good.
Yeah.
And it was a co-production with Raymond Chow from Golden Harvest as well. But it's very well done. It's closer to the comic book.
Uh-huh.
And, yeah. I like Casey Jones in it.
Casey Jones. I did Casey Jones cosplay. Like before COVID, I went to a Comic-Con and I dressed as Casey Jones. I had long hair back then.
Kobe Jones would be a cool character.
Kobe Jones, yeah.
Just coughs into your face.
And Vanilla Ice is the Go Ninja Go. That's in the second movie, right?
Yeah, that's the second one.
when they are in the nightclub or whatever, and they're yeah.
Yeah.
The real, oh yeah, there you go, the real turtles from the 90s. Yeah,
Yes. Of course.
yep, that's right. Let's see, we got um
I saw there was a question about Jackie Chan in Yip Man 4.
love from Germany. By the
Very
way.
cool.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you for watching from Germany, and greetings from New England and from Florida right now.
That's right. I lived in Germany for 3 years.
Oh yeah, you mentioned that in your podcast.
When I
Three
was
years.
studying Korean full time, I lived there for 3 years. My father's German. My father's from
Uh-huh.
Germany. So
Did you learn some, or did you already speak some German, or learn some, a little bit of German? Oh, you do.
unfortunately, I can speak German. Yes. Unfortunately.
That's awesome. Through the boats.
Yeah, it's probably referencing something we talked about before. I think that comment had been up there for a while. I don't remember what it's about.
The Panda remake famous movie photos on location.
Yeah, talking about in Hong Kong, like
Oh yeah.
go to different locations and take photos and do remakes of those things. Yeah, definitely do something like that. I don't know if anyone wants to try to do the Van Damme split there on Victoria Peak. They're
I'm
more than
sure,
welcome to. I'll sit back and take a photo.
I'm sure Viking Samurai would totally do it, bro. I'm sure.
Totally. He's got to come with me to Hong Kong. I'll show him. I'll show him around there.
Yeah, he totally would do it. Randis 626. Hi everyone. Hey, how you doing? Thank you for watching, brother. Let's see here. What's the topic of this conversation?
No,
We were, if you're still watching, Randis, we just talked. It's pretty open to comments and questions that you guys may have. It's just kind of Bruce Lee in general and Jackie Chan in general. I mean, I like to have these like open topics, but I mean, it's obviously movie related, Bruce Lee related, Jackie Chan related, um, martial art movies related, Ninja Turtles, Dragon Ball. I mean, any of those things work.
the stuff us nerds are into.
Jackie Chan sucks in American films. Well, yeah, the tuxedo. I'm not a fan of the tuxedo. Rush Hour 1 and 2, I like.
They were okay. They were okay.
Yeah, the third one not so much. Oh, there's another movie I was gonna ask you. I don't mind the fight. To me, it's not on the same level, but it still is a good fight. The one that he has in the movie Gorgeous with
Alan?
R.I.P. Brad Allen. Yes.
Yeah, Gordon. Yeah, you're right. I mean, even though I said I kind of didn't really watch his stuff after the mid '90s, but there were some exceptions, and I always thought Gorgeous was really great. There's some people think it was kind of corny and kind of silly, but I liked the fight scenes, and I also thought it was kind of cool that Jackie Chan played a character that was different from the characters he normally played.
Mm-hmm.
Because normally he plays some like an everyman who's kind of thrown into a weird situation. But in that movie, he was kind of like a little bit of a playboy, and he had like a different character in that movie, and I thought that was great. And the fight scenes are really fantastic. Brad Allen was really great.
Yeah, he was great. I like that they got two fights, right? And they're matching boxes or something, like
Yes.
they were black and white or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I own that DVD. It's also downstairs.
I haven't watched that one in a while. I want to do a rewatch for that.
Around this, Jackie Chan said he didn't want to be in Expendables because there were too many actors. Shaking my head.
Yeah, but that's a typical Chinese mentality. I mean, I don't know if that's true. I mean, I'm sure I have no reason to doubt it. But like Jackie Chan not wanting to be in a big ensemble movie is very Chinese. And many years ago, my former teacher Learn Teng gave me a very similar piece of advice because Chinese like to have banquets, like at a big Chinese restaurant, and then all the different sifus come and demonstrate on stage. Like this sifu comes, shows his sword form. The next sifu comes, shows something else. The next sifu comes, shows something else. You're eating and you clap. The next sifu comes, you clap. And then my teacher said, never do a demonstration at a banquet. And I was like, why? He goes, because they will have many sifus demonstrating and you will just be one of many. He goes, you only do a demonstration if you're the only attraction. But when you have to share with so many other sifus, don't do it. because then you're just one of many. And I think that that's a very kind of Chinese mentality, very Hong Kong mentality. And Jackie Chan not wanting to do Expendables for basically the same reason, because then you just become one of many. Totally makes sense. I mean, I don't know if it's actually true, but I could believe that he would. That would be the reason why he wouldn't do it.
It would have been nice to see him in that movie, but yeah. Well, we got Jet Li for a bit.
Yeah.
In the first one, because in the second one he's just there for a little bit, and then he's like takes the parachute or whatever. Okay, so it's Wheels on Meals. All right, Topher, thank you. Yeah, because I always get it mixed up or say it the wrong way.
Yeah.
Randy 626. Whatever happened with that rumor of Jackie Chan being in Ip Man 4? I didn't hear about that rumor. Did you hear?
I heard about it. It was talked about for a little bit, but then he ended up not being in it because they knew it was going to be the last Ip Man movie. So I think they wanted to do something kind of big. But then I think ultimately they probably just didn't want to pay Jackie Chan what he would be owed, because, you know, a big portion of the Ip Man movie budgets is Donnie Yen's salary, especially after he did Star Wars and everything like that. I mean,
Rogue One.
The budgets for Ip Man 3 and Ip Man 4 after Donnie Yen became that big, a lot of it is his salary now. So I think they would have been too much money to pay Jackie Chan. And also, like, what would Jackie Chan have done in that movie? I mean, every time an IP Man movie come out, yes, I know it's pronounced Yip Man, but I say IP Man. I'm a Wing Chun guy. I can be salty about that stuff. But every time an IP Man movie comes out, it's a great jump for our school. People find out about Wing Chun. It's really, really great. But the quality, I mean, and I have friends who are in those movies, so I usually kind of reserve judgment. But Yip Man 4 was, I saw it in the theater.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a slog to get through that movie, through the acting and the bad dialogue. And not to mention, I mean, I'm a Wing Chun nerd and I know the real story of Yip Man. I mean, nothing in that movie was accurate at all. I can get over that if the story's okay.
Yeah.
If the story's okay, but that wasn't really the case there, and it was a slog.
The fourth one, that I own the DVDs of 4 of them. The first 3 I watched in theaters. The fourth one, it was a limited release, so none of my theaters got it. So I had to watch it on my TV.
Yeah, it was playing here in Miami, oddly enough. So I went and I saw it.
That's the one with Scott Adkins, right? The last one.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you like the fight, or like the final fight, so to speak? Like
I didn't like any of it. Actually, no? I pretty much hate that movie from beginning to end. I just thought everyone looked like they were just kind of. I mean, don't get Chris Collins is in it, who was actually in my Kung Fu Family, and I thought he was great. But look, people can be in a movie and make a movie and put a movie together. I think that's really great, and I think, like, people who have careers and they do this stuff, and sometimes you make these movies, they're not as good as other ones. Like, I mean, congrats to people who can put together a movie and be in a movie and do that. I think that's fantastic. But as a consumer, I'm not going to be rewatching IP Man 4 anytime soon.
The first one, I don't mind. The first one is with Twister. He passed away. What was his
That's
name?
The second one. The second one is with Twister.
Oh, okay. Who's in the first one then? Oh, the Japanese guy, right?
Yeah, the first one. Yeah, Fan Xiu Wong was the northerner. He fights in the middle of the movie, and then he fights the Japanese guy at the end. I think the movie would have been better if the final fight was with Fan Xiu Wong, because Fan Xiu Wong was way better than the Japanese guy. Yeah, and you can see the movie changes tones, like when they have that middle fight scene, and then like the rest of the movie's like very different. It's almost like 2 movies story-wise. They're kind of very different.
And I read an article that the actor who played as the Japanese and for the final fight, he didn't know martial arts.
No, he didn't know. Sammo basically trained him for that film. Every day doing flexibility and stretching and you know, lots of close-ups and stuntmen and stuff. But I mean, that's Sammo Hung's. That's his mastery, where he can take people who are not even seasoned martial artists and he can make them look like they know. Like, he made that Japanese guy look like a legitimate karate black belt, you know.
Yeah.
And that's testament to the amazing skills of people like Sammo Hung. I mean, it's really fantastic. Yeah.
Daryl Chavane, Twister's name, his real name. He passed away a few years ago, but it was Daryl.
Unfortunately.
Daryl, I forgot his last name. Yeah,
his last name too. Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate, you know, passed
He was
away
young.
in Los Angeles, kind of suddenly, very young, and
Yeah.
yeah, what are you gonna do, man? That's how it is. You're in this world here, and it's one day someone taps you on the shoulder and you're not here anymore, you know. So you never
Yeah.
know when that day is. You have to appreciate it when you got it.
Steven Richardson, he says, "Hi, I'm joining you late. I just found out about the podcast today. My loss looks like all is going really well. Merry Christmas. Cheers." Steven Richardson, yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining. Yeah, we're
He's a Wing
still.
Chun practitioner. He's coming to my school a couple times from California.
Oh, okay, okay. Oh,
Yeah,
okay, cool.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you for watching, Steven. Yeah, we're talking, and again, we don't have a specific topic. Topher, we'll have to fix that one day.
Yeah, talking about the Dragon, me not knowing anything about Dragon Ball Z,
Oh, yeah.
but I just don't know if I have the time.
96. Oh, okay, that's when the movie. What movie we were talking about? 95, 96 too. Oh,
Uh,
yeah. Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball. Yeah. I just start. Yeah, so Topher and I started watching Dragon Ball since around the same year. Yep, 95, 96.
right.
Right here, you really shocked me with UMBL or UMBU. I always thought Bruce Lee did the flips. Yeah, I think most of us did.
Well, it's actually Yunhua that does it in Enter the Dragon,
Mm-hmm.
and Yun Bu just does the flips in Game of Death, but that was shot years after Bruce Lee died anyway. But yeah, no, Yunhua, yeah, he was the. I mean, some people like they get a little upset about that because Bruce, you know, of what they think about Bruce Lee. But I mean, this is movie stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of Jackie Chan, says Steven Richardson, I recently saw The Foreign again. A little different role and tone of character for Jackie. I enjoyed it. That one, Steven, I watched that one in theaters when it came. It came out what, maybe 4 or 5 years ago,
Yeah.
more or less. Yeah, I had the poster, and not because I was a fan, but I just had the poster. I never displayed it. Um, yeah, it was definitely well, like the Kung Fu Genius was saying. Now, Jackie Chan is older, so he doesn't do a lot of crazy things, a lot of crazy stunts in that movie. Is with Pierce
Pierce Brosnan.
Brosnan. Yeah, Pierce Brosnan is the villain. Oh, spoiler alert. Do you get to see it?
I saw half of it,
Uh-huh.
and I thought it was okay, but I had to let go, and then I just never went back and saw the second half. So
yeah, well, I think it's better than the Tuxedo, if that makes any sense.
that's a very low bar, though, I think.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's a low bar. Yeah. The Foreigner, Jackie Chan is barely in that movie. Terrible movie.
Yeah, people. I mean, it's understandable why people wouldn't like those movies. I mean, it might be a good movie on its own if you don't associate Jackie Chan with being this great action star. But I think the problem is when you have a certain association with an actor and then you see them doing something that's different, it's a little hard to accept that sometimes. But the movie itself might actually be fine. It's just like our own notion about like, no, Jackie Chan is an action guy. I don't like to see him in a serious movie or dramatic movie or whatever, but the movie itself might be good, but people have these kind of biases about what they expect from people, you know what I mean? Like, what if Bruce Lee had made a comedy with no martial arts? People would have been like, oh, but maybe it would have been really funny, but people would not have wanted to see it because it's Bruce Lee, right? So, you know, is what it is.
We got one more. It says, can you talk to us about Grandmaster William Chung? I don't know who he is. Do you know who he is?
William Chung is a famous student of Grandmaster Yip Man. William Chung was a Si Heng, elder Kung Fu brother of Bruce Lee. And he's a bit of a controversial figure in the Wing Chun world because he claimed that when he was a teenager, Yip Man secretly taught him a version of Wing Chun, which Yip Man did not teach anyone else in his entire 22-year teaching career. So basically, the story from William Chung is that there's a secret version of Wing Chun that contains highly specialized footwork. The forms are different, the choreography is different, some of the theories are a little bit different. And he claims that rather than this version of Wing Chun being William Chung's own creation, which most evidence suggests that it is, he said that Yip Man taught him this style secretly when he was a teenager and no one else was around. So it's a bit of an unverifiable claim because it's one of those things like he says, well, you cannot prove that I didn't learn this secretly from Yip Man in the middle of the night. But no one in the 22 years of Yip Man teaching, William Cheung is the only person to supposedly have learned this super secret Wing Chun style. At least that's his claim. So that's why he's a little bit controversial, because in the light of the facts about history, it seems that William Cheung's Wing Chun style is most likely his own creation, which is fine. I mean, people update martial arts and create their own things all the time, but he kind of had a bit of he kind of basically told people that he learned it secretly from Yip Man, and whether or not this is true or not remains to be seen. So he's a bit of a controversial character. One of my older Kung Fu brothers, a guy named Sifu Imin Bostepi, in the 1980s, had a bit of a tussle with William Cheung. So I'm not the best person to talk about it, because I assume people would think I'm a little bit biased against William Cheung. But I mean, I don't have any problem with William Cheung. I think he's part of the greater Wing Chun Kung Fu family or whatever. But he's definitely a bit of a controversial person. So.
Kind of like a quick question: is Chan Chu Man the guy who challenged Bruce Lee on a fight, or that was somebody else?
Chan Chi Man, the one I was talking about earlier.
Well, he was Yip Man's private student, right? Chan Chi.
Yeah, Chan Chi Man, the late Chan Chi Man. Yeah, he knew Bruce Lee. No. The challenge fight would not be within the same Kung Fu school usually. I mean, if people have a challenge fight, they get beat up, and then they join that person's school. But normally, once you're in the same school, you don't really have a challenge fight in the same school. I mean, maybe some Kung Fu brothers try to fight against each other or something like that. By the way, there's like some music going on in the background here.
Christmas or something, no?
Yeah, but it's playing automatically off of this, like, Alexa, stop. Oh, there we go. Okay, it just started playing randomly. So
the Nutcracker, I think it was, or whatever it was.
Yeah. But that's not the challenge fight. I think you're referring to is with Wong Jack Man.
Wong Jack Man. Yes, that's the one I was thinking about. Okay.
In Bruce Lee's own words, Wong Jack Man was a bullshit artist. Yeah.
Didn't they touch a little bit on the last Ip Man about that part?
In Ip Man 4?
Yes.
No, I mean, there was some Bruce Lee in there fighting karate guys, and they always portray Bruce Lee as if he was someone from his movies. So, but no, that was no. And even if they did, that if it's as accurate as anything else in that movie, it would not be accurate at all.
Yeah. And I know, like switching the gears very quick. I know that you started doing Taekwondo when you were a kid.
Right.
Yeah. So you did it for how many years? 4 or 5 or something like that, right?
No, longer than that. I did it for
longer.
7 years. Yeah, 7 years. Yeah.
Oh, 7. Okay. So then after that, did you switch right into Wing Chun?
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty much.
And so my question is, why Wing Chun, or how did that happen? Like was that the only option, or was it because that's what caught your attention?
Oh, Wing. Yeah, no, Wing Chun is not easy to find. Usually you find Taekwondo, karate, all those kind of things. That's why I started with that. But I always wanted to do what Bruce Lee did. So so I was always a big Bruce Lee fan. So it wasn't until I lived in Seattle that I had the chance to do Wing Chun, and that's when I started doing it. I mean, I had earned my black belt in Taekwondo, so I kind of felt okay. I kind of understood what that was about. I had good kicks, good flexibility, all that stuff. But I really wanted to do what Bruce Lee did. Okay. And so that kind of is what started it for me. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that makes sense. That you found it in Seattle, because before that you were in the Jersey, Connecticut area or somewhere.
Jersey.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, makes sense. That because that's where Bruce Lee started first, right? Orlando.
Yeah. So he had some students in the Seattle area, and I was very fortunate to meet some of them. And so it's kind of a very fitting place. I used to go to Bruce Lee's grave like once a week, almost like in the movie No Retreat, No Surrender. He'd go, but I wasn't asking Bruce Lee to come back to life and teach me. I would just jog up Capitol Hill, and I would go to his grave, and I would spend a few minutes with him. Sometimes just alone. There usually a lot of tourists that go there, and so I would go and I would spend time with Bruce Lee at least once a week for years. So it's kind of funny that I'm considered a Bruce Lee nerd. I literally would go to his grave as a teenager once a week and would just feel inspired. and simultaneously depressed. But the depressed part is because I lived in Seattle and it was rainy and shitty there. But also feeling inspired by being in the presence of greatness, so to speak. So
I'm sure that you didn't call him Sensei Lee like they did in the movie.
no, no.
Right?
Or later they when he finally comes back to life and he starts teaching, what's his face, he tells him to call him Lee Da Ge. And I remember as a kid going, what the heck is Da Ge?
I
And then, of
know.
course, later as I started to learn Chinese, they really mean Da Ge, which is older brother.
Oh,
But that's not what you would address a martial art older brother. In martial arts, your elder brother, Kung Fu brother, is Si Heng. You don't call him Dai Go or Da Ge. So it was a very poor translation. And what's weird is that movie was actually produced by Un Si Yun from Hong Kong. So it's like they had Chinese people working on it, but for some reason they just like, went with some very weird way of calling him older brother, and they used Mandarin, and Bruce didn't even speak Mandarin. So like the whole thing makes no sense. Sensei Lee, and then he's like, Lee Da Ge, you call me. It's like, no, Bruce Lee would never say that. Like, not in a million years. Not the ghost of Bruce Lee, not the real Bruce Lee. No Bruce Lee would say that.
and I know time really went really fast. I want to
Yeah,
let
I
you
got
go.
food. I got food waiting for me, and I'm like starting to salivate here right now.
I know before I wrap it up, I know that you're doing, because I saw it on your social media. You're doing like BJJ. Like, are you liking it? How often do you get to do
Well,
it?
I'm a martial arts nerd. I do a little bit of everything. I mean, I primarily practice Wing Chun. Obviously, I teach Wing Chun. That's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I also practice other martial arts as well because I want my students to know how to defend against different types of attacks. So, I still practice boxing, kickboxing. I have a
Oh,
great
okay.
jiu-jitsu coach in New York. I practice with him once a week so that when I teach my students how to defend different things, takedowns, wrestling, stuff like that, it's coming from experience, not just from my idea of what I think a wrestler is going to do. Like, I actually train with guys with their ears like this, nose like this.
Yeah.
I wrestle with those guys so I can improve what I teach my students. Yeah.
And one of the things that you said in one of your videos that I like a lot is about keeping always the mentality of a white belt. The
Yes.
white belt is better than the yellow belt.
Well,
Remember?
I call the professional yellow belt. Those are the people who
Yeah.
stick around for a bit and quit. But
Yes,
what I mean
yeah.
by like having when people start a martial art, they're very open. They want to learn everything, and then at some point, people start to think like, "Oh no, I got this. I know this. I'm an expert in this. I've learned this. I've finished this, or whatever." And then they lose the edge of being curious. And I think you always have to have this open mind of being curious and wanting to learn more. And it's the moment you start to think that you're an expert that you start moving backwards.
Yeah. No, yeah. When you said it, I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, because it makes
Yeah.
totally sense. They always want to be that sponge, always
Yeah.
learning and absorbing.
Yeah.
Oh,
And you can always be wrong, and being aware of our fallibility and things like that. So yeah, I mean, I'm the Sifu when I teach my students, but when I'm outside of the school, I'm constantly learning, reading, training, looking up new training methods, and but not because I feel I just need to do it for my students. I mean, I really love this stuff. I really love
yeah.
martial arts of all flavors, of all stripes, and obviously I'm specialized in Wing Chun, and that's my thing. But I'm a huge boxing nerd. I'm a huge MMA fan. I'm a huge jiu-jitsu fan, and I follow all that stuff just as much as I follow Wing Chun. So yeah.
There is one last question here. It says, didn't Bruce Lee say that he considered William Chung the ultimate fighter?
Yes, but I mean, based on what Bruce Lee thought, that William Cheng was a very good fighter when he was a teenager. And based on this assessment, William Cheng is like, well, the great Bruce Lee said I was like the ultimate fighter or whatever. But William Cheng was a very good fighter, and he was also bigger than most of the other classmates. And because Bruce Lee thought William Cheng was a great fighter, which he undoubtedly does, doesn't mean William Cheng's claims are true. These are two separate things. Someone can be a really good fighter and also not be entirely truthful about the history of their martial art. And this is where people conflate it. If someone is a really great fighter, it doesn't mean that they're still telling the truth. These are different things. Yeah.
Yeah. And everybody watching, I just want to say thank you for your time, and time time flew by like big
Yeah, man,
time,
almost 2 hours. That's
big time,
incredible.
almost. Yeah, wow. Yeah. It's been dark since we started. Over here is dark, so I lost
Yeah, yeah, of course.
track
Yeah, it's
of
dark
time.
already.
But thank you everybody for watching. And again, I'm gonna, if you are not a subscriber to the Kung Fu Genius, go and visit his channel. I'm gonna put a link to his channel down in the video description below, as well as a link to his website, City Wing Chong. And also there you're gonna find the other link for the upcoming trip to Hong Kong in this summer of 2023 coming up. And Sifu Alex, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to meet you finally. I know every Monday you have that uh, the podcast or
Yep.
the video. You go live and live in the chat and
Yes.
all the good stuff. And like Stephen Richardson says, good time and Merry Christmas. Thank you, Stephen, and Merry Christmas to you as well.
All
And
right.
enjoy your time, Sifu, Alex.
Thank you.
I know you're on vacation, so this is extra.
It's extra. Yeah, and I'm gonna go eat some food and relax.
And so, guys, thank you for watching. If you like this video, like, subscribe, and join the Kung Fu Genius here on YouTube. Merry Christmas, guys, and happy 2023. I'll see you guys very soon. And what else I was gonna say? And that's all I'm gonna say
About
about that.
that. Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.